century era industrial land. You know, I saw a lot of it. Like 2/3 of my R8 train ride to get to Center City is shallow industrial land for the sort of our Civil War era corridors. But there's a mismatch between that and what modern users want. And I think it perpetuates what I call the post-industrial cliche. And I'm glad to hear them getting through to people. Industrial buildings. It was called gravity flow production, where the manufacturing of an item would begin on the top floor, and assembly would continue to the lower levels. And on the bottom floor, assembly would be complete, the manufacturing process would be complete, and often there would be a rail siding alongside the building, and off would go the product for distribution. This is what we have, and again, as you know, we see these along the Amtrak corridor, we see these along the R5, the R8, along the rail corridor. So that's where these sorts of buildings tend to be. And as a result, places like this developed. This is Honey Park West, which is sort of the intersection of the East Falls neighborhood, nice town, and Allegheny West. This is like Stoney got and Tasty Cake's old baking facility and where the Bud Company was. But you know, we saw the development in that area. You know, towards the end of the Industrial Revolution, when Philadelphia was really considered the workshop of the world, we saw these tight manufacturing districts that were surrounded by neighborhoods. You know, people would walk to work. In many cases, like as in the case of Diston and Tacony, it was a company town where the residential neighborhood that was immediately adjacent to this industrial campus was actually developed by the company. So, I mean, throughout Philadelphia, we have this older model of Victorian era industrial development, which, as we'll talk about in a minute, is no longer what we need. And this is why. In 1913, Henry Ford developed the assembly line, which totally changed the psychology of industrial buildings. From this, going from this gravity flow production that I described, suddenly flat or large sites made sense, and larger industrial buildings that were one story became the predominant building type. I think this led to a trend that, is well documented, especially among those of us that consider ourselves planners, of suburbanization. During this area, the middle of the 20th century, all sorts of activity moved to the suburbs. I mean, we all know about residential development moving to the suburbs, but the same thing happened in industry, just because of the lack of competitive sites in the city. As many industrial businesses stayed in the core, stayed along these industrial corridors, but those looking to expand and move went to larger sites in the suburbs. Around the same time, the predominant mode of transportation of goods and raw materials shifted from rail to highways. And again, there was a inclination towards going towards the suburbs. But around this time, around the mid-50s, Philadelphia had something that a lot of its peer cities didn't have. As we know, we're a much larger city in terms of land area than most cities are. And we had some undeveloped areas around the periphery of the city. I mean, particularly what's around Philadelphia International Airport and what's around Northeast Airport. So in 1958, PIDC was formed as part of an industrial urban renewal strategy, and PIDC managed industrial parks throughout the city, mostly in the periphery. So as a result, we've got places like this. This is the Eastwick Industrial Park in pretty close to Philadelphia International Airport. Again, these were developed by PIDC using a very suburban model. And as John mentioned, over the last 52 years, PIDC has transacted 2,300 acres, approximately 2,300 acres of industrial land throughout the city. And as John also mentioned, our current inventory of industrial land is at an all-time low. We've got about 200 acres, and a lot of it isn't very desirable. And that's one of the big reasons why we've been working on this study, because we see that demand far exceeds the supply we have. So we need to think a little broadly about this. A little bit demonstrated in his portion of his presentation, the taxes and the jobs that are created by the industrial economy in Philadelphia are really important. So I think it's a pretty important policy goal for us to try to keep as much industrial activity in the city as we can. I think a lot of us in the room believe that cities, urban cores should be the center of economic activity within a broader, interconnected, interdependent region. But in general, we haven't done a good job of keeping a lot of industry in the city to the extent we could. So this is one of the reasons that we've been thinking about this study. And it's also important to remember, John mentioned that the nature of industry has changed quite a lot since the era of belching smokestacks. A lot of cities, as I mentioned, a lot of cities are doing similar industrial studies, and some of them have gone so far as to rebrand industry, that they produce these long, lengthy, great reports without even using the word industry except for a footnote. They've rebranded industry as production, distribution, repair, PDR, and the idea of people associate industry with belching smokestacks and not the cleaner, greener prototypes that we see today. I think in Philadelphia that we should be proud of our industrial heritage and we should reclaim the word industry. So we haven't done that, but it is important to remember that it's a broader definition of industry than it was during the Victorian era. You may buy a hat. Your hat wasn't manufactured in Philadelphia, but it took a string of industrial jobs to get that hat to the store for you to buy it, whether it's getting containers off of a port, distribution, logistics, that sort of thing. So it took a string of industrial jobs to get that hat to the stores. And then really quickly, some of the requirements, of the land use requirements of modern industry. We talked about the building types. It's pretty rare to see industrial development on sites smaller than 5 acres, so there's a lot. A lot of the land that we see along our rail corridor will probably never be industrial land again. Some of it at the margins, but for the most part, as we think about larger scale, private investment, a lot of that land needs to be thought of for different uses. And I think Scott will talk about that a little bit in his portion of the presentation. But zoning certainty is also a big deal. If you own a large parcel of industrial land and you think that you can flip it for retail or perhaps a casino, it's not going to develop as industrial land. You're going to hold on to it. And I think from the city's perspective, that does represent a loss of jobs and taxes. And again, Scott will get into that a little bit more. And so, just go to the next slide. We're fortunate to have Brian Cohen here from Liberty Property Trust as one of the panelists. But I think this comparison really demonstrates the changes in industry. This is PCK's old facility in Queen Park area, which is that picture that the aerial image I just showed before. A multi-story building. The production process in there, I hope I'm not insulting anyone in the room, but in some ways looks like an episode of What I Was Lucy. We have this fantastic, gorgeous, LEED certified building in the Navy Yard that has great transportation access. It's right by 95. It's right by the Plattbridge. It's on the water, and it's a great new prototype. And so it's wonderful that we've been able to retain one of our marquee companies in the city in Philadelphia. So with that, I'll turn it over to